Welcome to Beyond the Black Letter Law by Prism Chambers, a platform where we demystify legal concepts for you. Today, we welcome Stephanie Ng Tseung, Head of Payments at the Mauritius Commercial Bank. We had quite a lot to talk about on leadership, particularly in the context of gender and diversity. Stephanie, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
So Stephanie, you've been at the MCB for over 15 years now. How would you describe your leadership journey? Is it something that you felt was a natural evolution of your career, or is this something that you consciously aspired to when you were 18 years old, for example?
No, definitely a natural evolution at 18 years old. I wouldn't imagine myself working in a bank. So definitely a natural evolution. It came whereby, I was given more and more responsibilities and ultimately to lead a team, right? And this is, things just came into place. I never fixed myself saying that I want to be, in that position in like so and so years. In fact, even today, if you ask me where I see myself in 5 years, I wouldn't be able to answer that. But definitely a natural evolution. In fact, I must say, when I was still a junior and starting my career, I had a rather heroic view of what a leader is, almost sort of like someone who knows it all and, get very charismatic and people just follow him or her. It was almost like a corporate messiah, I must say. And I think that it's a very flawed vision. And the reality is leadership for me is something that needs to be worked upon, right? Very often we ask ourselves whether we're born a leader or whether it's something that we work towards to. I think it's both. I think everybody is born with intrinsic qualities that we can leverage on into becoming a leader. But I'm very inspired by what JFK said, that leading and learning actually go hand in hand. And I think a leader, you learn to be a leader.
When you're starting out in your leadership journey, I'm sure, hopefully you'll agree with me, how you started out when you held your first leadership role and where you are today. I'm sure you've seen an evolution in that as well.
Yes, for sure. Because first, I think leadership starts within. A lot about self-leadership. You need to be able to lead yourself before leading others. Self-awareness, self-discovery. And as a human being, I think we evolve. So obviously, the way that we lead will evolve over time. And also the context within which we need to lead will also dictate different types of leadership. So yes, definitely for me, it is not set in stone. It is an evolution. And I think this is what makes it so gratifying in the end, yeah.
How would you describe your leadership style? Is that also something that's evolved, or do you have a specific leadership style?
I think I'm quite versatile in terms of leadership styles, but I think we all have a natural tendency towards a specific style. Mine would be, I would describe it as being collaborative and action-driven. So collaborative in the sense that I enjoy working with teams. This is what I bring to the table, that is putting different teams together, working together, trying to find solutions to a given problem, and then shaping it into an actionable strategy. So I would describe my natural leadership style to being collaborative and action-driven. Having said that, in certain circumstances, you need to have a palette of different leadership styles. So during the lockdown, I found out myself to be more command and control.
Well, yes, there's no other, you have to navigate the ship.
Exactly. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly, yeah.
Do you feel that there's a difference between, you manage different teams, and do you feel there's a clear demarcation between management and leadership?
Yes, I think there is a distinction. Management is part of the responsibilities of being a leader, but I think being a leader goes beyond just managing teams. So for me, managing teams is ensuring that what needs to be done get done. So it can be done through different ways, but it is ensuring that you deliver what is expected. Whereas leadership for me, it's one notch higher, whereby you need to create a vision and mobilize team, the people, towards that common vision. So there's more, the people aspect is more present in leadership, in my view.
It must be. I mean, I was grappling with that question yesterday, and I would be interested to hear your answer. You head the payments team at MCB, so you have a leadership hat, and then obviously there's the CEO on top of it. Yes. So there's another leader heading the whole organization. How is your experience being a leader within a huge organization? Does it flow naturally, or are there clashes, or are there different visions? Do you need to all have the same vision, or is it problematic sometimes to lead within a huge organization? I think is what I'm trying to ask.
Well, I don't know whether it's problematic. It is. I think we in a large organization, and that's not specific to MCB. I think in a large organization. So when we say leadership, it's actually human beings. So obviously, our view of the world is different. The way that we tackle a problem is different. So we need to have what we call alignment. So that sometimes can be tedious and it can take time. But it is inevitable. And I think for us to move into the right direction, it is important to have those alignment. So I spend a lot of my time doing, stakeholders engagement, getting everybody on board, understanding their point of view, putting my point of view forward. So that takes time, but it is necessary in the type of environment like large organization. Also, I think what may differ from, let's say, an SME. So in large organizations, there are explicit and implicit processes. So sometimes you need to know how to read between those explicit and implicit way of working and trying to put your points across, and how decisions also are taken. So I think this is what happens in large organizations.
And do you think that a leader, because as you mentioned SMEs, and that's what made me think of this question, do you think a leader needs to have a natural flair have an entrepreneurial spirit? Or do you feel that there are different types of leaders and you don't need to have that sort of drive to inspire in order to be a leader? Can you just be a really good manager, for example, to lead?
Well, on the entrepreneur question, I think it depends on what is the task at hand, and what types of teams you're leading. It all depends on the context. So to your question, I don't think there is a definite set of answer, but for sure, I think a leader need to communicate. I think you need to communicate to your teams, and you need to give a sense of direction, and also a sense of purpose. And I think that the younger generation, at least, they want to have that sense of purpose, to understand, why we're doing it, and a leader need to be able to go beyond just the task at hand, and rise above it.
I want to pick up on what you mentioned about the younger generation, because that's something I think which all of us are grappling with at the moment, the expectation of the Gen Z. And I think their expectations are probably very different to what my expectations were, or the generation before me, what they expected of a leader. Do you agree with this, that they have different aspirations to what they look for in a leader?
Yes, I think that there are some differences, and there are, of course, also some similarities. In terms of differences, so by Gen Z, we're saying the newcomers into the workplace, right? They expect open and transparent communication, right? And feedback. I think they want to have feedback, like how they're doing, what is expected. They also, their relationship to authority is somewhat different, maybe to my generation. So if they don't agree, they want to have a space, to be able to safely say, what they think about a given situation. They expect flexibility. We're in the deep of that, about what is the new workforce. I think this is among their expectations. Diversity for them is a given. It's natural for them, all types of diversity, be it gender diversity or ethnic or sexual orientation. I think diversity for them is a given. And they want to understand, the why of what they're doing. So I think as a leader, you really need to articulate the purpose and the bigger picture and how they fit in. And they also want to know what's in it for them, right? Maybe my generation, the premise, the assumption is that, you work hard, you prove yourself, and, you just get going. But maybe they're asking the right question, like, okay, I work hard, but why? What is the ultimate?
They definitely want to work for more than just a paycheck. Whereas our parents and grandparents, they were working for a specific purpose of they wanted us to have the best education, for example.
Yeah.
For them, it's already there. They've had the best education.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm grappling with it myself. And talking still about the topic of the new generation, do you feel that, I think Mauritius experiences it differently to other countries, but do you feel we are going through some sort of great resignation as well?
I wouldn't say it's like great resignation like we're seeing in the US, but definitely there is, I am having difficulty into recruiting talent. I think, for specific roles varies whether it is tech-driven or in terms of business development types of roles. Now there are opportunities, whether working for tech companies from Mauritius or opportunities abroad. So I think there is more mobility. Yes. This is what we're seeing, and it's not even like, we believe that we're a recruiter of choice, but we still struggle, to acquire talent. So I guess there are more opportunities and there is more mobility. Yes.
Well, I don't think there's a quick fix to that. But I don't think there's much we can do to prevent them from seeking out these opportunities. But is there something that you think as a country we could do better to retain our homegrown talent at this stage?
So one is having, giving opportunities and career path, right? We won't be able to, prevent people grabbing opportunities. In fact, I think it's a good sign, and hopefully, those talent will have experience, elsewhere, and then come back like you did, and then that will be very good for the country. But I think having clear employee value proposition, be it in terms of career path, in terms of training, exposure, if people feel that they're still learning in their present job, that would keep them, wanting to grow and staying in the company, but still growing and still learning. Yeah. Do
you think having a mentor would help? Do you think it's good to have a mentor?
Oh yes, definitely. Personally, I haven't had a formal mentor-mentee relationship as to let's enter into a mentorship agreement, but I must say that I've been blessed and lucky, to have people who've really cared for me. I mean, the English word is cared, but I think the French word bienveillance is more appropriate. And
had your best interests at heart.
Exactly. Yeah. So they come from a good intention and having as you say, your best interests at heart. And it helped me, and it's still helping me, to be able to reach out to those persons, discuss, an issue, having a sounding board. Sometimes it's there just asking, the question and get you thinking into the right direction. So definitely I would encourage at any age to have a network where you can reach out, and if you can have a formal mentor, then yes, even better, even better, yes.
And you mentioned also diversity earlier, as you said that they take it as a given also. But obviously the way things are today weren't what things used to be 10, 20 years ago. Has gender ever been a hurdle in your career path, and how have you overcome it, or has it never actually really been an issue for you?
When I started my career, what we're talking about, diversity, gender, etc., it wasn't really on the agenda. So to your question, no. I've never portrayed myself as a woman working in so-and-so industry, and the financial industry is still quite male-dominated. I've never positioned myself or viewed myself as that. I view myself as being Stephanie, and this is me. Be it I'm a woman or a man, so that doesn't make any difference. On the other hand, in hindsight, I think I would have gained, having more female role models while transiting in my career. I do remember sometimes in some meetings being intimidated by strong alpha males, right? And hence, to your first question, that was my perception and view of what a leader should be.
I see. Yes.
But as I said, the reality is you can have all types of leaders. But I've never restrained myself because I'm a woman. But now that I am more into a sort of I have more leeway to lead to decisions, so I am more in a decision-making position, I think that organization, we need to see how we can create an environment and a culture for both men and women to thrive, right? Because very often, the question that I ask myself is, whether I would be able to juggle family and work, right? Whereas now I would say, how can I create an environment for the woman and the men, because it is a family issue, to be able to juggle both family and work, yes. Right? Instead of adapting myself, it's like, how do you actually change and create the right environment? Yes. Yeah. And we were speaking about, talent. Talent is already scarce. So imagine if you're having an environment where 50% maybe or so of your talent can't, sort of you're not making it friendly for them. It's a talent wastage. So I think it is, we need to create that inclusive environment.
Yeah, I was going to say it's also the inclusiveness, because you might have set targets or certain criteria that you might not want to meet, but unless there's that inclusive environment that enables them to, which also might not be conscious, and I think unconscious bias sometimes plays into that as well, because you might not think actually I'm creating a discriminatory environment, but because it's an unconscious decision, it has that result. I think things are going in the right way. I think there are, and I'm sure you've seen evolution, obviously not just where you are now, but generally in Mauritius, you've seen the evolution. There's probably a lot of work still to be done.
Yes. I think we're heading in the right direction. Definitely a movement has been created. And I hope it's unstoppable.
Yes. And I always, when I first created Prism, we now have one man in our team, but when I first created Prism, everyone was telling me, you're creating a women-only law firm. And I thought, no, that was never my intention. Maybe it's my unconscious bias. So we recruited a man, but he's, not because he's a man. I think I was discussing that with the previous guest, that a lot of the issues with women as well, I think, is a lot of the self-limiting beliefs that we impose on ourselves. Yeah.
So I always say to the younger member of my team, or females at the bank, we talk a lot about the glass ceiling. But the first glass ceiling to be broken is within, right? So we need, chip by chip, break this glass ceiling. And at MCB, as you know, so we set ourselves a target, and it's good that we've got target, because what gets measured gets done. So we are doing, at organization and culture level to make it more inclusive. So you talked about unconscious bias, so we did training to make people aware of unconscious biases. But also, working within. So we've just launched lean-in circles, so that, women, they create those lean-in circles, and they've got a network of peers where they can share experiences, grow together, encourage themselves. So I think it goes both ways. The organization needs to be inclusive and needs to ensure that the culture and the environment is, allow both men, women, or whoever, to give the best of what you can contribute, and also help the women to work on their self-confidence and on their, to be more daring.
Still to this day, I struggle to find one man who says proudly, I suffer from imposter syndrome. But there are so many women that would just raise their hands again. I suffer from imposter syndrome. So I think it's this innate sort of societal conditioning as well that, you know, might be generational, that we have been conditioned to think that, you know, I always give this example of a woman would rarely dare to ask for a pay rise or to aggressively negotiate for their starting package whereas a man probably would feel a bit more bullish in doing that. So there's all that unlearning to do. What would you say, you know, looking back at your leadership journey, has been one, the most rewarding time, and two, the most challenging time, personally?
Now, I'm going through what we call, you know, a transformation project. So for me, it's a very rewarding project because it's like, you know, setting a new operating model, introducing new ways of working, bringing the teams together. So it's very gratifying. And very often I say, you know, like people ask me, you know, what makes you tick, you know, what makes you spark. And for me, I get a lot of joy, you know, doing that. To my daughter, Emma, she can't understand how I can enjoy, exactly, how I can enjoy myself. But it actually brings me a lot of joy, you know, like leading that transformation project. And it's also very challenging because the way that we're organizing ourselves is different. So we're adopting agile practices. That's in terms of teams organization, but also the challenges that we need to solve for, you know. So I'm into payments, more specifically, you know, digital payments. It's like, how do you make the country, so it's at macro level, you know, cash light, a lot of problem solving, a lot of challenges, but a very gratifying journey, I must say.
Wonderful. Do you feel that a lot of the joy that you get also has to do with how strong your team are, so how strong your support system is around you? Because I think it's one thing to have a big vision as a leader, but it's also, you know, that's one side of the story, but it's also the execution and implementation side as well. Did you have a good sort of support network in terms of your managerial team?
Yeah, for sure. No, for sure. I wouldn't be able to do it alone. I always say that to my team, and I always tell them, you know, none of us is as strong as all of us. I always tell them that, and very often, you know, I know where we want to go. It doesn't mean that I know every steps, but with the teams, right, I know for sure that we can work it out. And more, you know, that's why I think the styles of leaderships need to evolve, because the problems to be solved are different, right? We talk a lot about, you know, VUCA environment. And as a leader, I mean, I can't say I know 100% what is happening, right? But as a team, and so my team and the wider team, right? If we put our heads and hearts together, I think we've got a much better chance of striking the solution, right? Yeah.
Stephanie, thank you so much for your time. I have got a last question for you before we finish today, and I've asked that of men and women. Okay. I always preface that question by that. As a leader, I mean, I struggle with it every day, so I'd love to hear about if there's any magic recipe. As a leader, how do you balance work and family?
For me, it's like having me time is super important, right? And I would share that I've experienced being, you know, the feeling of being like overrun and like always chasing time. So I make it a priority to have me time, right? Because I think you as a leader, for you to be able to give your energy, your passion, right, you need to feed yourself first. So I've become quite disciplined about it. So I start my day with a prayer and a meditation. So that's my grounding moment. And I see to it that at least 2 times per week, my yoga. So this is to evacuate, you know, whether it's energy, you know, but it's super important. And then also it's trying not to be a hero person, you know. Very often,
try to do everything yourself,
and women especially, you know, because we want to be like
Supermom,
supermom, the best cook, the model employee. But hey, we're human, right?
And there's only 24 hours in a day, and we need to sleep 8 hours.
Exactly.
That's such a good tip as well. And I don't know if you do journaling. kind of stop and start, but I think it's so important to kind of find, even if it's 5 minutes or an hour each day, to just be with yourself and take stock of what's happened during the day. And you mentioned, you know, the prayer and the meditation, just feeling grateful for the little things as well.
Yes. I think
so important.
grounds you.
Yes,
And,
absolutely.
And help you, you know, prioritize your question as, you know, like work and life and how to balance it. Sometimes it's not balanced, but here we
try.
we try.
We try every day.
But I think
yeah.
if we've got, you know, gratitude, yes.
Yeah,
be
I think,
grateful for
yeah,
what we
and
really
especially when sometimes I feel a bit overwhelmed, I always try to kind of think of really mundane things and just think that, you know, I'm so happy that my family and I are healthy.
Yes.
It might be a really basic thing that I think we sometimes take for granted, but after going through the pandemic and COVID, you just think that something that we take for granted is actually something to be really grateful about. And I think that helps as a leader to, as you said, to ground you. Thank you so much for your time again, Stephanie.
Thank you for hosting me.
Pleasure.